Welcome to Rooted Within with Lily and Dan, a podcast that shines a spotlight on positive change makers, sharing their stories of legacy, inspiration, and impact.
Are you in first or am I?
I don't know. You know what? When you were away and I tried to do it, I'm like,
You messed up.
I turned over to look for, just by default. And I'm
That
like,
wasn't
oh
here.
no, I'm going to have to say the name. And
I was traveling.
I got it wrong.
Oh, of course.
You would have been so excited.
I always get it wrong.
got it wrong. You can't get today wrong.
I know. In the studio today, we have Scott Armstrong. I got that one right. I'm sure that was easy enough.
Welcome to the Rooted Within podcast.
With Scott Armstrong.
Funnily enough, I did get asked the question, is there any relation? Armstrong.
To Louis,
Armstrong.
Neil.
All of them. Any of them.
we're
Special
very
ones.
Famous ones.
We're
yeah.
proud of pretty much all of them apart from Lance.
Oh, I mean, like, he was a legend
For a while
for
there.
a long time.
For a
And then he was
while
like,
there,
he
yeah.
got done for doping.
And then they found out the only reason he was a legend was because he was cheating.
How many times did he win?
Quite a few times.
we always go off on a tangent. this is not-
Early for the tangent.
I know, this is
though.
about
This
you,
is
not
straight
like,
out of the
this
gate.
is you, not Lance Armstrong.
This is usually where we end up, but we do come back. So welcome to the studio.
Thank you for having me
It's
here.
great to have you here. So if you're not related to Lance, who is Scott Armstrong?
Oh, that's a big question.
I
I'm not
know.
sure I still know. I am a storyteller, I guess. I've been a journalist since I was 16 years old. Didn't go to university, started in newspapers before the internet existed, and I've been telling people stories ever since.
How was that? Like, because back then,
That's
like,
brilliant.
media was different.
It was brilliant. Yeah, actually, the media stood for something then
Yeah.
as well. It wasn't just about clickbait and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You could
It was
actually
real journalism.
It was real journalism,
Real storytelling and
you had
investigative.
and you had time. Yeah, you didn't have the resources. You didn't have the
How
internet.
did you get into it at 16?
I was kind of lucky. I got introduced into it. English was like the only thing I was really any good at. When I was 15, we were not in a really great space. Family breakup. Bit of time on the streets, bit of time couch surfing, all that kind of thing.
You
So-
had time on the street.
Time on
Yeah.
the street.
I love this. Guests
Yeah.
on our
So-
podcast always just dropping these little things. It's like,
Little-
whoa, let's just go back a step.
Little bombshells and just keep going. I'm like, street. Okay, let's go. Rewind.
At 15.
Yeah. So yeah, it wasn't easy. The family break, it was a family breakup. Mum and
Okay.
dad got divorced. There was a emotionally abusive stepfather. He used to kind of threaten to throw me through windows, and
Oh, wow.
occasionally they decided that I should no longer stay there. And unfortunately, I got estranged from my father at the time.
Yeah.
We became close in later life, but yeah. So kind
You
of
got
bump-
thrown out of home at 15.
yeah.
And, sorry, Mum was okay with that?
Look,
Didn't have a...
Yeah, my relationship with Mum, and if you're watching, sorry about this, Mum, has been difficult and on and off ever since then, really. So,
Wow.
and it's I'm not sure we haven't had that proper conversation yet, and I still probably haven't dealt with all of that. And that kind of rejection, that
Trauma.
sense of that
Yeah.
direction. Yeah, and it
Trauma at
actually was.
15.
It actually was trauma. No, but journalism was kind of my saviour. It's just that I got introduced to it, landed on my feet. A weekly newspaper in a town
How
called.
did you get introduced to it?
Through my then girlfriend's father, who was a parish councillor, who knew the local paper. This was like a weekly Friday newspaper in a market town called Newark.
Okay, I know Newark.
Yeah, absolutely. I won't tell you what it's an anagram for. You can work that one
I
out
don't
for
know.
yourself. Yeah, and that's started from there, and I've just been telling stories ever since, really. So
Okay.
But at 16, where were you living?
around a lot of couch surfing. So a lot of friends and a lot of couch surfing. At one point, me and some friends tried to get a place together. That was interesting. We ended up with no water, no power, no heat in the middle of, no gas in the middle of. So we'd sometimes have foil trays trying to start a fire. I'm amazed we didn't burn ourselves to death because we were literally trying to do a campfire in
the living room.
In a living room.
Oh, wow.
There were a couple of nights where it was actually warmer to go onto the streets and sleep with people on the streets because there was more people around and you could keep warm, and they had.
But why didn't you have power and energy?
Money.
Because we didn't have any money.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you had each other.
Yes, we had each other. What a beautiful time that was.
I mean, yeah,
Well,
life changing.
You could have been, it's to share that with
The
people
alternative
as
would be
opposed to be
different.
on your own. Because 15, 16 to...
It was a lot. I'm really grateful that my children don't have to go through the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think only at 50 years old, beginning to try and figure out, hang on, there's something there that, that trauma's. I've had imposter syndrome all my life, never felt quite good enough, all that sort of thing. And then when you kind of wake up to, I don't know whether you call it self-awareness or mental health, and you begin to look at it, you go, oh yeah, I wonder if that had anything to do with it.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to jump ahead for 1 second and then we'll come back. Is that childhood experience the reason why you are doing what you're doing today?
Yes and no. Well,
Yes.
it's one.
Part
Yeah.
of it.
I kind of say I got 3 whys, and
Okay.
the first one is me, and the first one I need to kind of forgive that kid in some ways. You know, I need to make peace with that kid. So there's that. So I am one of them.
What did you need to forgive?
That's a good question, really.
I told you she asked the good one.
Yeah, no, it's that whole
Just a
like,
very curious
just
person.
trying to get some peace with who, you know, that insecure kid. I was bullied at school. I
Yeah.
didn't step up enough. You know, I've had that insecurity pretty much all the way through. So yeah, just trying to go back to that. Going, do you know what? You're not to blame for any of all of that. It's just the
It
way
wasn't
that
your fault.
it wasn't your fault.
Just who you
which-
were.
Pardon?
It's just who you were at the time.
It's just who I was at the time, you know, and it's taken.
And it's a card you were dealt.
Yeah, and that's how I've got to kind of process it and figure out. Okay, so the confidence, you know, the versus the insecurity. How do I, at 50 years old,
Yeah.
kind of go right? Yeah, you are good enough, and this is something that with the platform we try to talk about a lot. Like, so many of us have got imposter syndrome. So many of us don't actually genuinely believe we're good enough, and it's like, well, we really actually are.
And when did you know you had imposter syndrome?
Oh, do you know what? It kind of I've had it all the time. I think it came through after my father's death. 4 years ago, my father had a mental health breakdown and drank himself to death in 3 months. And I genuinely, and it's I just like, I looked down at his body in the open casket. I went, we never talked about this.
Yeah.
Because he was your typical 1970s, strong, British, repressed, didn't talk about their feelings.
Yeah.
You
Because
know,
men generally didn't.
Men didn't. Masked
They
with
still
alcohol.
died
Yeah.
to a great degree. They
no,
still
they don't.
died.
Won't get into the statistics on that if you want, but they're
Yeah.
terrifying. But yeah, and I just at that point was like, no, I've got to start talking about this stuff. And then it was kind of like, I've got to start talking to myself about this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, because there is confidence issues there, and you know about it. So I think it was there. It's funny because I've been a journalist nearly all of my life.
Yeah.
Forgive me for being a journalist, but I took a kind of a side step into communications, and I worked for a really good company, Hill and Knowlton Communications.
Great agency.
Great agency and really good people there. But it was so bizarre that even moving slightly tangentially, because you wouldn't think there's a big difference between journalism and communications.
Yeah.
We're off, but there is.
There
You
is.
know, but I didn't think that going in.
Okay.
But the minute I couldn't call myself an editor, or the minute I couldn't call myself a journalist, I was like, I have no idea who I am. So, you know, you come back to that question about, who is Scott? I was like, if someone had sat to me and go, right, okay, put the job aside, who are you? I'm like, I genuinely don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I knew who I was when I was 16, or I knew the things I liked when I was 16. But, you know, when you go, right, so you got Scott the husband, Scott the father, Scott the worker, Scott the colleague, Scott the boss, Scott the...
Those
like,
are all things that you do.
they're
They're
all-
not who you are.
Exactly. It's like, who is that person? So it's been a journey since then, particularly, yeah, probably the last 2-3 years on like, who is Scott? What are the values? What's important to me?
Have you nailed a few of your values?
Yes. Yeah, I have.
Can you give me your 3?
It's trying to be of value, you know, which
Being of
is
service.
yeah, being of service, and that's why I want to try and have these conversations about mental health. But also, I stand up for myself and I show up for myself now in ways that I've never done, you know. And I've got, I wouldn't say here's the imposter syndrome, so I can't say nice things about myself, but I am definitely leaning into my principles more, you know, stand up for what is right, stand up for yourself,
Yeah.
you know, don't bend even when, you know, other people want you to bend in a certain different direction because they don't agree with what your vision for something might be. If it's truly important to you, then stay to it. You know, the old Frank Sinatra, do it your way. And so
And set those boundaries.
yeah, I've begun to get prouder of myself, which is not something I've been able to say. Oh, it's not a word I would have used. It's not that I haven't done stuff that I'm proud of. I have.
But to say it to yourself,
But I
and
wouldn't have
gift
said it to
yourself.
myself. Yeah, I always needed the pat on the head.
Yeah.
You know, I always needed the validation. It wasn't, do you know what? I'm really rating myself for actually having done that and holding the line and not.
How did imposter syndrome affect the way you were a journalist? Because as a journalist, you really got to stick to your own guns. Because you're telling a story and you got to be able to stand firm behind a story, even when other people go, no, that's not the story.
I've had this conversation with other journalists as well, and that sometimes it can in a way, and actually lots of mental health conditions can be a superpower in some respects. You know, I have been ambitious and always chasing, but at the same time, I've always felt it's just a question of time before someone finds me out.
Yeah.
So you're always trying to prove yourself
So it made you work
to
harder.
somebody else.
Yeah.
You're not proving yourself to yourself.
Yeah.
It's to
To
always
someone
try
else.
it to somebody else. So you do end up working harder, and you do take things very, very personally. So it's
And in many ways, that can help you make these achievements.
yeah. And look, if I look back on my career, there are some standout moments with stuff that we worked on as teams that were just actually really, really good. We changed the law in the UK to help protect children from kidnappers.
Okay.
Let's talk about
So
that for a
many
second.
questions.
I know,
I'm not coping
know,
here.
we
There's
just changed the
so
law about
many
kidnapping.
questions. We thought we were here just to talk about like mental health and bring that, but kidnapping.
And it was my old mentor, a great guy called Kevin Booth, who was my editor in York, of all places. But we discovered at the time that if you were a would-be kidnapper who was going to kidnap a child for sexual purposes, but didn't get to go through with it, then if they couldn't prove it in court, they couldn't put you on the child sex offenders
On the
register.
list.
So essentially, you've not done anything wrong.
You've not done anything wrong, so you couldn't be stopped
Even
from
though
working.
you attempted.
Yeah.
Scary.
And even if and in that case, because the CPS, they said, look, basically, we know he kidnapped this child for these reasons. It never happened, but we know it was only because he was stopped. So we launched a campaign and we took it all the way down to number 10 and we got it through the Parliament and the House of Lords and we got the law changed.
How long did that take? Like, what was that process?
That was about a year. We did petitions. We got MPs involved.
Who were supportive?
Who were supportive. We
campaign.
got, I don't know, you might remember Sarah Payne.
Yeah.
So Sarah Payne and Sarah Payne.
Her daughter was kidnapped and murdered, I think.
Murdered. So she backed the campaign for us as well. And then, I think her quote was that we'd protected children forever, which was like, God, and at the time I didn't have kids, but now looking back,
How does that make you feel now, looking back?
I
That's
don't own
huge.
it. No, I still don't own it.
Okay.
I got sent. I got to go down number 10, and Tony Blair showed me around number 10 because I ran his campaign in the millennium when there was a recession going on. We got thousands of people back into work.
Yeah.
So we kind of teamed up with the council. We teamed up with loads of different agencies and got people into work. And Tony Blair invited us down to number 10, and literally there's a picture of me and Tony Blair, and he walked us around. What your opinion of Tony Blair is these days, he was the Prime Minister of the day.
Yeah.
And I still look back at it and go, yeah, these are things that happened almost to somebody else.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's
You're looking kind of like outside in.
yeah, it's
That's
kind of
right.
go, right, own it. And there is something there that at least I can look back and go, I always did want a campaign. So now and I sat with their Clifton Strengths coach the other day. There's all different types of coaching out there.
Yeah, it's a good one though.
That is a good
I
one.
like it.
And I got this, you do this random report and it came back and the random report came back and went, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And that was quite powerful. I
Eye-opening.
almost cried
Yeah.
when I read it because it was just like, I've never actually...
It gave you that kind of
because these are all like
it's your natural strength.
such random weird questions, and then they come back and they go, right, this, and you come to it with a bit of skepticism, and then you're reading it and you go,
it
you.
is one of the best ones
Yeah.
I've seen out there.
yeah, and I was just like, what witchcraft is this? But at the same time, I was quite emotional. It was like, yeah, you actually are doing what you're supposed to be doing.
When you saw that report and you saw that you are doing actually what you should be doing, what you are naturally gifted in doing, still imposter syndrome?
Yeah. It really, really took me a couple of reads, 3 reads to even, because then I met Donald, the guy who did it for me, super lad, sit down with him. And I was like, again, reading it before I sat down to talk about it, and I was like, this is quite powerful, really.
Yeah.
To all of a sudden realise, maybe I do have some strengths and I can actually do this. I mean, and that is a journey I have been going on because I have launched this business.
Yeah.
I have worked for other people for more than 3 decades.
So just to sort of linear the timeline, went into journalism, started your career over in the UK. How'd you end up here?
Well, we went to the Bahamas to start with.
As you do.
As you do. So I was the business editor for a newspaper called the Nassau Guardian. So that was in Nassau, Bahamas. We were there for a year, which was tremendous fun.
So that must be an amazing experience.
It was an amazing experience. There's not an awful lot to do there but drink.
Okay.
And at the time, there was no drink drive law as well. So it wasn't the soberest of years.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great. And the team, the guys I worked with there were fantastic. They were also super hungry because they were all trying to get, Miami was literally 30-minute fly away. So everybody wanted to go and work in Miami.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did that. And then we had a choice between Jamaica. I got offered a job in Jamaica or Abu Dhabi
Okay.
to go and work for the National. And at the time, the US were trying to extradite a drug dealer called Dudder's Coke. Great name for a drug dealer.
That is actually. It's like you couldn't make that up, really.
No, literally, and so people were getting macheted in the streets and stuff. So we thought, you know what, let's give
In Jamaica, I'm
Maybe
assuming.
in Jamaica.
I was just double checking. It wasn't the streets of Abu
Maybe go for Abu
Dhabi.
Dhabi then.
Yeah.
So there we thought, yeah, let's give Abu Dhabi a go. And yeah.
Did you know much about Abu Dhabi or the
Do you know,
UAE?
I really, really didn't. It was kind of like such a leap in the dark.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we got to, and in the Bahamas, there's not a lot.
Yeah.
You know, there's beach and there's hotels and there's not a lot.
Yeah.
And just walking around Abu Dhabi the first few days, I'm literally texting the missus going, we're going to be all right here. It's
Yeah.
going to be good.
It's a good place.
No, it's a really good place, you know, and I'm delighted that we washed up here, 13, 14 years ago.
So in terms of what you're doing now with Mental,
Yeah.
which is the organisation
Yeah.
you've created, where did that come from? How did that happen?
Well, in my previous job, which was editor-in-chief of Arabian Business, I don't talk about it too much, but a lady called Celia, Dr. Celia from Lighthouse Arabia, wrote a column.
We've had her on the show.
Yeah.
before.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
She's amazing. And
It's like go for therapy.
yeah,
Shout out to Dr.
Amazing.
Saliha.
And she wrote this column about how it's not easy for people to stand up to bullies here, because at the time as well, and thankfully, I mean, the government's gone on a big journey in terms of improving people's, the personal laws, employment law, golden visas, green visas, but her whole article was kind of like how there are bosses out there that make people feel in fear of their jobs.
Yeah.
So it's not just so easy to kind of stand up to a bully, because if you do, at the time, and they've changed it from 30 days to 6 months, but at the time it was 30 days and you're out. So your kids lose their school, you lose your house, your health insurance, you lose your existence in this part of the world.
Yeah.
And you look in the UK going, I don't want to go back to the UK, I want to stay here.
Big
and
consequence.
That really resonated with me, because I'd gone through, in past experiences, some pretty dodgy, some dark times with toxic leaders. So I launched a resilience channel and really wanted to lean in. When I took over that job anyway, I wanted not to talk about clickbait, not to talk about Ronaldo or whether it was Eid or not, but to talk about ESG and to talk about diversity, equality and inclusion.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about human stuff. And particularly when I took over, we were in the middle of COVID as well, so the business world was really hurting.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's be when we talk about values, if we're going to have values, let's be the guys that help. Let's be the guys that amplify. Let's, a rising tide lift all boats, because the business community needs to come out of that. I'm not entirely sure my previous employers shared that same vision, but the more you see it, the less you can unsee it. Do you know what I mean?
Correct.
So it just felt that I was going in that direction. I just kept getting pulled in that direction. And then I've got, so there's me and my growing self-realization. There's what's happened to my dad. And then you begin to see what's happening to students and young guys between 19 and 25 and the suicide statistics, which are off the chart. I've got a 7-year-old girl who basically rules my world. I just do as I'm told, but she's going to need better tools growing up in this world than I had, because it's really, really scary out there.
Just going quickly back, because you mentioned about your father a couple of times.
Yeah.
That was a huge thing that happened. I guess you want to talk a little bit about that?
It just woke me up.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was like a massive bell had gone off inside me or something like that.
Were you back in touch with them?
Yeah,
at this
we'd
point?
been.
Okay.
We'd been close. Like our adult relationship was really good.
Okay.
If I looked at him as a father, and he got remarried, and he was happy with his second wife, very much so. His children, who are my brothers and sisters, great kids.
Yeah.
More confident than we were growing up, because at the time, my dad wasn't happy, but he was an angry man.
Yeah.
As
Like
so many
men
guys.
are. Yeah, it's something that I struggled
but
with.
particularly of that, they were in a marriage and they weren't happy.
Yeah.
And there wasn't really an out back then.
No,
There
it
was
wasn't.
an expectation that
It
you
was-
stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that impacted him. But no, we had a good relationship as grown-ups.
Yeah.
But we never got on to talking about feelings, talking about, there was some stuff I did, we talked about the past, and I had to have a pretty robust conversation with him as well, because the way the family broke down and the way that I got kicked out, and he didn't take me in. He did have the opportunity to take me in. He did actually help me out and put me into temporary accommodation.
Yeah.
So thanks very much, Dad. But again,
could have been more.
If I feel like I'm sounding like I'm blaming, and my mother's situation with that stepfather as well, I'm not going to blame her for it, because he was an awful person. She ended up with a very controlling, very just. He's since left this world, which is not a bad thing. That sounded uncharitable, but
that happens.
Yeah. But I had, my dad had some responsibility for that as well.
Yeah.
So I had to work through that and have some pretty difficult conversations with him, going like, why didn't you take me in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you were saying he was going through his own mental challenges.
Yeah, he was going through his own mental challenges. He's going through his own, and I think he just got with a new partner. And look, I've been divorced as well. And it isn't easy. I know it's not easy, because you don't know how much do you lean into your new partnership, and how much do you try and protect any kind of friendship's probably the wrong word, but particularly because I've got a child with my previous wife as well, so there needs to be communication.
Yeah, there has to be a relationship.
There has to be a relationship. Yeah. So again, it's difficult because I can kind of understand where both my mum and my dad ended up, because there's no manual for it.
No.
You
kind of learn as you go.
You learn as you go. Now, you'd hope that values guide you through. And I think, I've managed to get to a point, I'm very grateful now, where I've got a great second marriage, got a great family, and the line of communication is now not toxic.
Yeah.
So my boy comes out and enjoys Dubai. We often go back and say, no, I'll come and
yeah, of course.
see you in
Dubai.
Dubai. Yeah, he was going out the UK,
Dubai,
it's fine.
But what broke your dad?
What broke my dad? Well, it's a very complicated one, but he'd watched his mother go into a care home as his mother got addicted to painkillers back in the 1970s. So she ended up in a care home and her brain went to mush. He watched her, and she was super, super intelligent, and he idolized his mother. And he watched her disappear in front of his eyes. So really what happened was kind of like, he went in to have a double knee operation and walked out the next day, because he's a hard guy.
Yeah. As they do.
Yeah.
There we go.
The other word is be idiot.
Yeah.
But then he couldn't take the anti-inflammatories. He couldn't take the painkillers. He couldn't take the tablets. He had this mental aversion
because
to
of the previous experience.
Because of his mother. So then he just started medicating with alcohol, but trying to cover up the pain, because he was as hard as he was in absolute agony.
Yeah.
Because he just had 2 knee operations and walked out the next day. So he was an idiot. But we were trying to reach him, and I'm in Dubai, he's in England, guy, just take the painkillers, but he couldn't get over that mental block. And then the alcohol just took hold of him.
It's a monster.
And he was gone. He was gone. Literally 3 months later, he was gone. Wow. And I was always like, nice, Dad, he's so strong. Of course he'll get over this.
But was it just the alcohol that got him?
In the end, he had like a brain aneurysm, which so there was cirrhosis of the liver, but cirrhosis of the liver also then causes hallucinations and all that sort of thing. He got to the point where the doctor said, you cannot give up alcohol tomorrow. If you give up alcohol,
your body will shut down.
Your body will shut down.
Yeah.
It's so reliant.
Yeah. So, but he couldn't get through it, and ended up with a bleed on his brain, and they tried to operate and all that kind of thing.
The saddest thing here was that it was avoidable.
Yeah, and that's again is that the ability to be able to. I mean, how many guys are out there right now though? That we can't.
You were going to give the statistic.
Oh wait, it's one of the biggest suicides, one of the biggest killers of men right now. Yeah, particularly between 40 and 49. I'm glad I'm 50.
You made it through.
You made it through. But if we look at you look at boys 19 to 25, second biggest killer of in the UK of young men is suicide, but also that 40 to 49. It's huge.
Well, it's a real transition time.
There's a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
I mean, because at that point you've got guys who have got you've got I've literally posted about it today actually. But you've got the responsibilities of being a husband, you've got the responsibilities of being a father. If you're a manager, you've got responsibility to your team, you've got responsibility to the profit and loss, you've got responsibility to your boss or the board. Then you've got school fees, and you've got there's
also ego, being a strong masculine
but that's the
person.
thing. Your
and
responsibility is all that. You
Yeah.
can't possibly say you're not coping.
Yeah. And then physically, your body, if we talk about what happens to your body at past, the brunch belly,
35, past
brunch belly
35.
comes, the moobs come, you don't
True.
look as good,
Yeah.
you don't feel
Things
as
start
good.
to fail.
Your testosterone levels genuinely do start to go down.
They
That's
drop
physical things.
They drop
happen.
significantly.
Yeah. So then all of a sudden you haven't got energy. You think you look like crap.
Yeah.
You're not looking after yourself. You've got all those responsibilities, and you can't talk to anybody about it because if you do, you're weak, which is such BS.
Yeah.
It is.
And on this journey with this mission, this platform that with mental, the amount of times I sit down with guys in particular, and so quickly do we get to the mental health conversation. And maybe
Yeah.
it's just because now my antenna's up,
Yeah.
but guys, they need to talk about it
Do you feel that they are starting to talk about it, that it's getting better?
a bit.
Yeah.
A bit. And we're running a men's retreat soon, which is kind of like a blend of physical and mental health. So there's paddleboarding with meditation.
Nice.
There's fire and ice, which is saunas and ice baths, which are
Yeah.
really, really good.
It's
for
really
you.
good, really good. I started them
Really good.
recently.
Extremes.
But then there's some stuff in there as well, which is like Reiki and
Yeah,
sound
which
healing,
works.
which
Yeah,
does
that's
work,
helped me.
But you've got
but
a bit of a
you-
hurdle to get
but then
over
you've got
perception, right?
Exactly, because it gives that. Well,
It's
that's
like,
a bit
how do I do that?
Oh,
A
it's
bit weird.
woo-woo.
Yeah, a
Woo-woo.
bit spiritual.
Yeah, it's a bit woo-woo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll
it's
send
spiritual.
I'll send my wife.
Yeah, but we were lucky enough to be on stage with Deepak Chopra, and he was like,
Yeah.
literally, all the multimillionaires and the billionaires.
That's what
They're
they
all
do.
doing it.
They're all doing
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
Well,
all
they've
the
been doing it.
successful.
They've been doing it from the beginning.
Yeah.
That's why they've
So this
survived.
is the secret. Like, it isn't weak; it's smart.
Yeah.
I
to
do
be
think
looking after it.
I do think men are taking more notice of this now, because when I went to my therapy sessions with Lighthouse,
Yeah.
I was quite interested. I walked into the reception area and it's full of men.
Good.
And as I was sat there waiting for my appointment, it was men coming out of the rooms.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the key things which I took away from that, because I thought there was stigma around going for therapy.
Yeah.
You
think it's
you
wonderful.
told me to go for therapy for
I
so
was
long,
like, just
and I never went, and it was
no.
always because I
and
don't
it
want
was,
to be perceived
and
as
it
being
was
weak.
so hard to watch.
Yeah.
It really, that's the thing. I've got two brothers.
Yeah.
They've gone through stuff, and I just look at them, and I'm like, and I can see,
Yeah.
I can see the pain.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, I'm fine. I'm like, you're not fine.
No, you're not.
Just speak to someone. And especially for me, this is close to home because Middle Eastern culture,
You don't talk about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
It's
No,
not
there-
acceptable.
Dan, there
Yeah,
is no such
nothing.
thing as mental health.
Yeah.
You're fine. Just, whenever
on, man up.
Yeah, man up. Or like I used to have a vitamin B, you'll be fine. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, not fine.
They're trying. I
You
mean,
know?
the UE here, to be fair, they are trying to change that
Huge,
now.
but
We work with
huge.
Dr. Nahida a lot. She's the chair of the UE Mental Health Task Force. They've got a new mental health strategy coming. They recognise from a
Yeah.
kind of actually, often when we look at the UK, it's the public sector lags the private sector.
Yeah.
Here, the public sector is completely leading the charge.
Yeah.
And it's the private sector that needs to wake up to this
Very
and
true.
realise this is the direction of travel. We can't put mental health back in
Oh.
the box. We can't go back to
No.
that Victorian steel
No.
mill mentality. And the
But
thing is,
but it's a cultural change as well, right?
Yeah.
You like it's fantastic. Like you are right. It's fantastic. The middle, especially the UAE, is
Yeah.
setting the scene and setting a really great benchmark. But you can build it, but the people need to come. So
Yeah.
that's the next hurdle: getting the community to understand that it's okay.
well, there's two things going on. Sorry, I rant about this all the
No,
time.
we love
But the
this.
business world, it's like there's two things you got to recognise. One, well, there's loads of things you need to recognise, but you don't get to put this back in the box. You look at Gen Z and you look at the millennials. If you want talent, and the only way your company has any kind of sustainable future is if you attract the talent,
Yeah.
they're like, I don't want your treadmill. I don't want your awful existence.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know when we got past this point where all of a sudden, maybe it was around the 2000s, but we convinced everybody that work was more important than their life,
Yeah.
Yes.
than their kids,
Yeah.
than their health. And the only thing that they should be worried about is making somebody else more money.
Yeah.
Now the pandemic, the great resignation, all that sort of thing.
All the multiple recessions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we've got the kids who are coming through, and they're looking at the world of work anyway, and
Yeah,
going,
which is hard for
it's
them.
it's a Ponzi scheme. Why should I go and do that?
Yeah.
I've got enough tools here, and now we've got AI coming down the tracks. Mid-Journey, Chat GPT, all that sort of
Yeah.
thing. The kids can just go, I don't need to come and work for you.
It's like
No, they can
enter-
do
I
their own
don't, I
thing.
don't, I don't want
Yeah.
this. Why would I want that?
No.
And we often, I've worked with managing directors and chairmans and all that sort of thing. And they'll look at the kids and go, well, we were miserable. They should be miserable too. I was like, well,
It's
you're just-
the worst thing to
Well,
say,
of course, because you're
right?
just kind of like perpetuating that cycle.
But it's like-
Yeah.
Like that cycle's being broken now.
it was like, but they don't need to, they don't have to be miserable.
But it's not just that. The fact that you were miserable, isn't that a reason to want to
To
create
change.
change?
Yeah.
Why?
No, but
Like, when
we
you say
survived
that,
it, so they should have to
but
survive
you're
Yeah.
basically
it. It was
saying,
character building. No, it wasn't. It was just
No.
bloody awful.
Yeah, and it was actually causing trauma
Yeah.
that we're all now trying to fix.
Yeah.
but you're also like, so you're saying you want a world for your kids to be where they get,
And I don't
where they're
get
miserable
it.
and they're
I
horrible.
literally don't get it. And
Like,
it's funny.
be the change you want to see in the world.
It's funny, because my boy, 21, he graduated, he's got his first job. And he's in aerospace engineering. He's got actually a really decent job, and they work 4 days a week, and they get to finish early on a Friday, and they can do remote working. So he's in a good position. And he's already going, oh, yeah, but I don't like this treadmill. I have to get up at 7:30, and then I go to work, and then I finish at 4 o'clock, and then I've only got time to go to the gym for 2 hours, and then I've got, and
It's like,
You're
okay,
like,
hang
take
on
the
a minute.
wins, kid. Take the wins.
And part of me wants to go, "Ah!" And the other part of me is like, yeah, but actually, I don't mind the fact you're questioning this now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
So what I've said is, look, you need to get the experience, mate. You need
Yeah.
to get that on your CV, and you need to learn those lessons. But if you're already looking now and going, I don't necessarily need to be on this treadmill like you did for 3 decades.
Yeah.
So I was like, look for the opportunity. Look how you're going to do it. Or if you get to the point in this job and you go, I don't like this, screw it.
Yeah.
Leave it. Go and find the thing that you do want to do. And that's a conversation that when I came into the world of work, it never happened. I was lucky with journalism.
Yeah.
It was something that
Well,
I was
it wasn't-
passionate about.
yeah.
I've always been a storyteller. I've always wanted to have conversations, probably talk too much, but
It's a good thing.
on podcasts, I suppose.
Yeah, of course it is.
But so I've been looking in that profession, but there's so many people that get trapped in jobs
Yeah.
That
and it's like that they hate,
Yeah.
and it's like
And they just stay in them for life.
yeah. So yeah, for the kids. So circling all the way back, like companies now that don't get this, they're Walking Dead.
Yeah.
They are
They will be
zombies.
obsolete
They
eventually.
They will be
survive.
obs-
Yeah,
they
very
will be
quickly.
obsolete.
Survive.
And then when you speak to people who are advising the government, there's a guy called Dr. Mazen who advises the Dubai Health Authority, and we were on a panel together, and he was basically saying, look, this train's coming down the tracks. You can either be on board it or you can
Yeah.
be run down by it.
Yeah.
And it will get to the point where, because we know, like, the UE altered its working day, went from the 5-day to the 4.5 day.
Yeah.
And when they did it, okay, there were some practical reasons aligning with international markets,
Yeah.
but they also said work-life matters. And we're all going to like, when's the 4-day week coming? When's the 4-day week coming? We probably will get there, but
I mean, it's there essentially already
yeah,
in many ways.
pretty much is, yeah. Said the guy sitting on a podcast at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon.
I know, but if you look around our offices, no one's here.
Yeah, that's true.
So
yeah.
we just do 4-day working weeks.
Yeah.
So what is your vision for mental? What is it that you want to bring into this world?
I want us to all have more conversations. Someone asked me the other day, it's like, how do you tackle stigma? It's like one conversation at a time.
Yeah.
But we need you to have open, honest conversations. The reason why we're called mental rather than fluffy brain sparkle is because you just want to, again, have
Say it as
direct,
it is.
say it as it is. Fluffybrainsparkle.com was also taken, so we couldn't get that website. But it's just like, we need to, the figures, and again, I'm Mr. Statistic. 1 in 3 people. This is so the World Health Organization said 1 in 4 will be impacted. There's research here by the Zayed University of UE, all that sort of thing. This is 1 in 3 here. It's 1 in 3. They're the people that present to the system.
Yeah.
So statistically, it's 1 in 3.
Yeah.
And we know it's 2 or 2.5 or
Yeah.
if you're going to get from 0 to 99 and not have an issue, you've hit the lottery, and it's probably not
We
true.
all have issues.
No,
Yeah.
we all
we all
have issues.
Many people just don't know they have them at
Yeah.
the time, and it takes
So,
something
but it's like
to
what you said, self-awareness
release
is
it.
a massive thing.
And I think we need to transition as well, and we're not there yet, even with the medical profession. Again, to go Celia, she talks about the physical side and the mental side. Like we talk about them as if they're not connected.
Well,
But
they
they,
are.
but they are.
so
There's one
connected.
system. Like we
Yeah.
haven't just taken our brain and put it one side, and that's fine. So we spent a long time talking about physical health, and we're
Yeah.
kind of beginning to get to that point where so we go to the gym, or we know that alcohol's not good for us, or we know we need to hydrate, or it's like, but what do we do for our
Mental well-being.
And even like we go to the gym and we take the vitamins, we do maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when it's mental health, I'm glad you're all going to therapy, because Celia would also say to you that it is maintenance.
Yeah.
It's a checkup.
It
It's
is.
not necessarily I have to be in crisis
Yeah.
to go and see a therapist. And I think that whole conversation where it's go, right, it's one system. So
Yeah.
one of the taglines of the business is like, let's make all health mental health.
Yeah.
You know, because it is. You know,
I
It's
like
interesting
that.
on a personal story.
I like
Like
that.
it took me to get like put on weight and to feel horrible, and then to have like an emotional mental breakdown. To then go like, I need to fix both of them, and by fixing both of them simultaneously, it's been the most amazing thing ever.
Yeah. I see people that even look going for that walk in the first place is a really good place to start.
Yeah.
But it is, it's not just physically.
Yeah.
It helps
You got to
this.
keep going. 'cause
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
Have to.
And
my
it's-
dad used to always say, and it just, and he did a lot of walking. He used to always say, when the mind's not good, exercise.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and that's great that he took it that far. But it's like,
can take it further.
It's got to go further.
Yeah.
You know, do the exercise fine to sort of quieten the mind, but now go deal with the mind.
And
Yeah.
on that note, do you think we will take it further? Do you think it'll get to the point where the stigma around mental health and everything will diminish?
Okay, so I've launched the business and we're 1 year in. I don't think I'm going to be able to put myself out of business in a year's time. But ultimately, yeah, I do think we do, because I don't think we've got any.
There's no other way to go.
I mean, you look at US Surgeon General just this week turned around and talked about loneliness.
Yeah.
You know, which is another
It's a
condition.
big one.
Big one. Well,
I had that
now
with a friend this week.
now the science tells us, and the US Surgeon General has said, this is as bad for us as tobacco. It's a public health crisis.
Agreed.
wow.
Agreed. We're social humans.
Yeah.
Humans are social. We're community based.
But you can also be lonely whilst being social.
But you are.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the thing is, the world has become a lonely world.
Yeah.
The world we've created.
Yet we're more connected than ever.
But that's the
But we're,
sense. But we're
and yet we're
connected.
lonelier,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we're
we're lonely.
less
But we're
connected.
connected
We're
in
not,
a digital world.
yeah,
Yeah.
No longer in a physical world.
yeah.
In an emotional world.
Yeah. So how can people reach out to you? I've got Dax giving me the
Wrap it up.
wrap it up because
Well,
we can keep going.
The website, so Mental Space, MENTL. So it's mental.space, SPACE. So that's our website, mental.space.
Brilliant.
I'm on LinkedIn. Just look for Scott Armstrong or Scott Armstrong editor, and I'm
That's
on.
how I came across you. Something popped up on LinkedIn. I was like, I'm going to speak to this guy, and then you had a call.
Yeah. Like I think I'm sorry to everyone on LinkedIn. I'm not going to shut up. So you just
You
kind of-
No,
shouldn't.
don't you
Please
dare.
don't,
No,
please
please
don't.
keep going. We're going to be following you. This is wonderful.
Thank you. Look, and again, one conversation at a time.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really grateful to you guys having these
Anytime.
conversations.
This is the first of many.
Yeah, I
It'll
think
be the first of
I think
many.
we'll get them back in next
For
season
sure.
to see where it's at and how you're helping the men that we love in this world.
Absolutely. Well, it's not just men; it's everyone.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
True. Thanks,
Thank you so
Scott.
much.
Great.
Loved
Thank
it.
you. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Thank
Cheers.
you.
Welcome to Rooted Within with Lily and Dan, a podcast that shines a spotlight on positive change makers sharing their stories of legacy, inspiration, and impact.